Dear Women in STEM, welcome back to another episode. Welcome to the final episode of season 1 of the Dear Women in STEM podcast. I'm your host, Lillian Judy, and today I want to tell you a story. Before I start, I want to say that this story is a story of God's faithfulness. So regardless of how ugly it may look or sound, regardless of the things you hear, just know that at the end of the day, God was glorified in this story. So about 2 years ago, exactly on December 14, 2021, I got a text from my sister, and she basically said, it's time to share your story. Like, in a nutshell, that's basically what she said. And usually I would panic before even agreeing to do something like that, but I just had something in me say, oh yeah, I think it's time. Mind you, my sister barely knew a lot of details about my story. She just knew the parts that involved my family, the parts that I had shared with them. And so it wasn't like she knew everything. She just knew that there was a story there, and she was just like, it's time to share a story. I was like, okay. And then she was like, okay, we're going on Instagram Live at this time. Just get ready. I remember a few minutes to time right before I joined the Instagram Live, I was so nervous. And my boyfriend at the time just, he walked into the room and just encouraged me and said he was so proud of me and reminded me of why I needed to do this at that time. So I hopped on the Instagram Live and, I shared the story with my sister, and there were so many parts I think she was really shocked about. There were so many things that happened, things that I shared with her that she never ever knew that I had experienced or gone through. And I don't even think I didn't plan to share some of the things that I shared. As the conversation went on, I just kind of found myself sharing certain things. I clearly remember that after this Instagram Live, my DMs were blowing up, and I was really scared because I felt like I had just exposed myself to the world. I had basically just told people my business, and a lot of my friends didn't know some of the things that I went through. A lot of people barely knew the reason why I even changed schools, and so many people didn't know what was going on. And so at this point, it's like I'm now, like, people are finding out my deepest, darkest secrets, I guess, and they, my DMs were full. So I started reading through the messages, and I was really shocked to find that a lot of people I know, people I don't know, people who just knew of me, people that I grew up with, shared how much they connected with my story and how proud they are of me and how brave I am to be able to share this with the world. And it made me realize that a lot of people are struggling secretly, right? A lot of people are going through things and really struggling on their own. And so this year, when I started this podcast, and I was like, I want to create a safe space for women in STEM by sharing my story, sharing my journey. I really wanted women to be able to connect with my story. I really wanted people to be able to connect with some of the things that I've gone through, so they know they're not alone, so that they, find this podcast as a safe space for them, and, to help pull them out of some of the dark spaces that they may find themselves in. And I remember my sister shared this with me. I don't know if it was before or after the episode aired, before or after the Instagram Live, actually. And she was like, towards the end of the year, a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people struggle. A lot of people just reach a point in their lives where they're like, honestly, I just want to give up. And suicide rates are really high. And, people are depressed. And for those who live in places where it gets really cold, like I do in Boston, it's even more depressing because the weather even adds to just everything that's going on. So it makes you feel even more depressed. And I'm a testament to that. I've experienced that many winters, many Christmases. I found myself just wanting to be curled up on my couch, just in my thoughts, just focusing on all the things that I'm going through at that point in time. And yeah, so I was like, you know what, let me just share this story, especially because I'm transitioning into a new season in my life, and I know a lot of people find themselves waiting, a lot of people find themselves losing hope, and I strongly believe that there was a reason why I went through everything that I went through in my life thus far. And so I don't want to just sit on this testimony, and I want to share it with the world. So I truly hope that you're encouraged. I truly hope that you're empowered. I truly hope that you're inspired by my journey and my story and just how far God has brought me. Because when I think about it sometimes, it's extremely overwhelming. I came to the country in 2011, and my goal was to study chemical engineering, right? It was a huge sacrifice from my parents, and I came, and I was a really strong student in high school, especially in classes like math, chemistry, French. Those were the classes that I really majored in. And so when I was coming here to study engineering, I didn't think I would struggle in any way. I mean, at least for the first year, I thought it'd be a breeze. And when I even started my classes, I was like, wow, this is pretty easy, right? Especially calculus and all that. I was like, I've taken this before, it's not that hard. But then I found my grades dropping. After my first year, I lost my scholarship, which was one of the main reasons why I was allowed to come study in America in the first place. And if you're an international student, and I've shared this multiple episodes, multiple interviews, I've said this so many times, that your stay in America is dependent on your performance in school. And so when I lost my scholarship, I found myself, trying to hide everything. And I fondly remember I went to Ghana one Christmas for an event. I think one of my sisters was getting married, and I forgot that they would post everything that you receive is always sent to your official address, which is always the address in your home country. So my parents, it basically went to my dad's office, and I thought, I had figured this out and everything, but unfortunately for me, that semester I was placed on academic dismissal. So I was basically being kicked out of school. The moment I received that letter, I was so scared, and I was like, what can I do? So I started scrambling, talking to all my friends, how do I get out of this, And I managed to appeal, and I thought, I was in the clear. So I came to Ghana thinking all was well, not knowing my parents had also received a copy of this letter that I thought I had, figured out, done everything. And during the event, my parents received this letter, and it was a lot. It was painful. It was not a fun Christmas break at all for me. I just wanted to hide, and I just wanted to just be by myself, So I managed to get reinstated in my program, and so I came back to Florida. And that semester I found myself, trying to catch up and stuff, but it wasn't easy, and I couldn't pull up my grades. And so I believe I got another letter, dismissal. This part is a bit foggy, honestly, because I feel like I buried this part of my life so deep that I don't recall, all the specific details. But I remember I found myself in a space like that where it was okay, it's time to go. And so my family decided to, have me come back home, basically, because if you're not doing what we told you, we sent you here for, then what are you really doing there? And you're wasting a lot of money. But God being a faithful God, I managed to, I was given the opportunity to transfer to another school in another state, Massachusetts, where I am now. And I was able to basically start all over again at a community college. I knew nothing about community colleges. I knew, I had no idea what that was, but, God found a way to, have me transfer and start all over again. So I was retaking classes that I had failed in Florida. I was just doing everything all over again, And I remember it was like night and day. I was getting A's in all those classes now. I was working at the same time. So it's not like things were easier for me now, but I don't know if it was a mindset switch. I don't know if it was just the classes being smaller. I don't know if it was just me having gone through that experience and just wanting better for my life. And so I pushed harder. I don't know what it was, but my life basically turned around and I was acing my classes. I got on the dean's list for the first time in my life. And I even became a chemistry tutor and I believe a math tutor as well. And this was crazy because it's like, this is the girl that was failing not long ago. And let me just share this with you. When I found myself, struggling to basically catch up and rebuild my grades and, just do better. The day that I found out that I was supposed to move back home to Ghana, I no longer wanted to be here and I wanted to take my own life. And this is not my proudest moments. And I don't say this to, boast in it or anything. I say this to the person who finds themselves there right now, because I have spoken to a number of people who have shared this with me that, yeah, I've been there a number of times and I don't know how to get myself out of there. When I found myself in that dark place, I did do things to see it through, basically. But God had a different plan for my life. And it was just the devil filling my head with so many negative thoughts. And I know that, especially in America, life is really hard and things get really tough. You're paying so many bills, you're working, the country itself is stressful. Like, there's so much pressure on you. And it's like, you're a foreign student, you're an immigrant, you're really trying to make it. You're trying to make yourself proud. You're trying to make your family proud. And a lot of immigrants also have additional pressure on themselves because it's like you're the one that everyone is looking up to make it, because once you do make it, everybody after you will actually be given the opportunity, or everybody after you can now come and pursue education here or whatever. Some people I know were the ones taking care of their families. They became the breadwinners. Like, it was just a lot of things going on. And so I know there's a lot that, compounds on an individual in this country. But I want to reassure you, and I want to encourage you today that if you find yourself in that space, I promise you it's not the end of the world. I promise you God has so much more for you, so much more in store for you. I promise you that this is just a stepping stone to where God really wants to take you to. I wish I knew that. I wish someone told me that when I was in that dark space in my life, that it's not over, that there's so much more for me. But in that moment, I was just focused on how everything in my life was not working out, and not even realizing that, yeah, things may not be working out, but somebody probably has it worse than you do, And so if you find yourself in that space, talk to someone. You can reach out to me, send me a DM. I'm happy to talk to you, help pull you through whatever space you find yourself in. But yeah, that was one of the darkest things I've ever done in my life. And I regret it, but I know that I just had to pass through that. God needed me to go through that to be able to fully rely on Him and to be able to fully understand what He has planned for me in my life. When I finally started excelling in school at the community college, I was working at the same time, and I was, it's like life was just different for me now. I had moved from like an amazing state to a state that was just always cold, so it wasn't like a smooth transition. A lot of people, when they met me, they would say that who would move from Florida to Massachusetts? Like, it makes no sense. People are rather trying to move to places with good weather. And I had to lie. I had to, just cover up the truth and all that. And I remember during this season, I was alone. Most of my friends back in Florida did not know what I was going through or why I suddenly left the school or the state. But I just, because I was embarrassed. It's very embarrassing for you to tell your friends that, yeah, I'm kind of being kicked out of school. So yeah. But it was a very isolating time in my life. And I recall I stumbled on Sarah Jakes on YouTube sometime. She has this 8-part series called Lost and Found, I believe. And she was just talking about her journey. And it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, there's someone out there who literally, like, it's like she's talking to me. It's like she's telling my life story. It's like she's speaking directly to me or about me. And I just automatically connected with her, because at that point in time, I really felt like a failure. My family was being very supportive, but I felt like the black sheep of the family. I felt like I had failed everybody and I just couldn't get things right. I felt like, everybody was tiptoeing around me. People didn't want to say certain things around me, but I knew it just felt like everybody around me was always whispering, talking about me failing school, me almost being kicked out and all those things. So I was very insecure, and I found solace in the videos that Sarah Jakes had released. And then from then on, I started listening to her sermons, and I think that was the way that God pulled me back to him, because during that season of my life, I got closer to God. I even started sharing a lot on social media, not really telling the full story, but, just kind of hinting at different things that I had gone through, and just that survival, or that rising from ashes kind of story. And I recall there was a season where I even started creating a women's prayer line where I would, we started praying. Like, my faith was really activated then. And I, pulled my close friends, my friends that I had made in Florida, friends that I had just made in Massachusetts, and just everyone I could connect with. People who were even, I remember there was a girl that I didn't used to speak with in Florida. Some way, somehow, through connections, she ended up on the prayer line one time. And when I noticed it was her, I realized that God, this was bigger than me. It wasn't just for me, And, the prayer line, I think it did what it needed to do in that season of my life. And I believe I achieved what God wanted me to achieve during that time. I was able to, support a lot of my friends. I suddenly became like a safe haven for a lot of my friends. Anytime anyone was going through something, I was the person they would call for encouragement. I was the person they would call for me to pray for them. And I started getting connected to some really good friends that I believe now are friends and sisters for life in my life. I built really strong relationships and connections with people. It was like a rebirth for me, honestly. And one would think that, like, God, did I really have to go through such a dark time in my life just so you can bring me to this point, But at that point, I was like, oh my God, like, God has done it. Everything is all good. Like, I'm just at this amazing point in my life and nothing can stop me. And then I went on to transfer to a 4-year college to finish out my degree in plastics engineering. That in itself was another testimony. I started off strong, and then I started having issues again, slipping back in my grades. But then in my pursuit of that degree, I was connected to so many angels along the way, like random people who gave me opportunities. And one story I like to share is how I got my internship. One internship that I got, I randomly walked into a professor's office and told him I was looking for an internship, and I really wanted to get an internship for that year, that summer. And I believe I was asking him sometime in the spring. So that's like 2 months away. But he suddenly had a connection, called someone. I got an interview, immediately got the job. Like, it just happened so fast. And I had so many of these encounters along the way. And then on this journey, I also met the love of my life. The reason why I have this now, and the reason why I could not release the episode on November 23rd because I was busy getting married. But I believe when we started dating and things got pretty serious, there was a day that I just sat down and I was thinking, I was like, so if I had been successful at not trying to be on earth anymore, I wouldn't have met this person. I wouldn't have been able to bless all these women who have suddenly connected with me. I wouldn't have been able to, do all the amazing things that has started happening in my life, basically. And so, that relationship blossomed up to this point. And I believe that was one of the things that, really reassured me. It was like another blessing from God to say that I haven't forgotten about you. I haven't let you go. I get choked up about this part because like when I think back to how dark things were for me, it's like I started telling myself that I don't deserve any good thing. I don't deserve any blessing, because I tried to take matters into my own hands and, just make decisions for God. He's an all-knowing God, and I tried to do things for him. Along the line, I, finally graduated from college, and I remember even graduating, getting to that graduation point, I had one class that I needed to retake, and I needed that class in order to be able to graduate. I didn't pass that class, and I had told my family I was graduating that year. They had made plans, tickets, everything. And then when my whole family was here ready to celebrate graduation, I got an email from my department basically saying that I'm not going to be able to graduate this year. And I was traumatized. I was devastated. I was like, God, what else can go wrong in my life? Like, I've had enough. Like, I'm tired, and it's like another miracle. Like, some way, somehow I ended up, being allowed to walk for graduation. And then I took the class the next semester. But God always had a plan. I think that's just the story I want to tell you today. God always had a plan. At every point that I thought I was just like nothing was going to work out for me, God always came through. God always had a plan. I finally graduated, and I applied for my OPT as an international student. And that's basically the authorization I needed to work. That took a while to come through. I have no idea why this took so long, but it just did. And I think it was another event in my life that really shook my faith as well. And I literally just had to rely on God. I would go for interviews and I would have 4 or 5 rounds, and it wouldn't go anywhere. And I got all the way to the end of the period of time where I needed to have found a job. And I believe it was a week and a half to time. That's when I finally secured a job, and I no longer had to leave the country for any reason. I landed a job that I didn't really love, but that was also another stepping stone for me. I found myself working at this place where I didn't really like my manager. I didn't like my superiors, but I loved my coworkers. It was always fun going to work. I enjoyed every single day at work. And when I started working there, a few months down the line, I started interviewing again for a much better job. And I think it was another crazy experience. And if you haven't heard me share this story, you can probably find it somewhere on my YouTube. But I shared about how I went all the way to a different state for an interview. And basically, I had gotten the job. I got the call that I've gotten the job. I remember I was driving home that day from this job that I didn't like. And basically, they were like, oh, yeah, you've gotten the job. This is the amount of money they're going to give you. It was like, it just felt unreal to have received this offer. And shortly after, I got another call basically saying, yeah, sorry, we have to take the offer back. And I remember that day so well. I was driving back home from work. It was raining really bad. And I had a panic attack after that call. Like, I could not breathe. Like, I was like, once he said, I'm sorry, we are taking this offer back and blah, 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 they said, I couldn't even park the car to just take a deep breath. Like, I was literally having an anxiety attack or panic attack or whatever it was. I could not breathe. I managed to call someone who managed to calm me down, and who knows what could have happened if I kept going the way that I was, but that was probably one of the most painful experiences career-wise that I've ever gone through. But that was also another lesson in my life, because funny enough, years down the line, the people that were working there ended up losing their jobs because of COVID. And I found myself in the company I'm at. That in itself is another testimony. Like, I feel like my life is literally just God always saying, okay, let me test this girl a little. All right, she'll pass. Then let's keep it going. Let me test her again. And so it's always been like that. And I think, one would think that, okay, Lillian, like, you've been through all these like different trials and you should kind of get the flow now. But every single time, it always gets to me. With my current job, I remember I got let go from the company I said I did not like working at. I walked in one day and I was called into my boss's office, and there was someone else sitting there. And basically she said, I'm sorry, but we have to let you go. I was like, for what reason? Like, it didn't make sense to me. She was just like, oh yeah, sorry, like, things are just not working out, blah, blah, blah. I was like, in my head, I was like, first of all, I don't even like this job. So how dare you guys try to let me go? But I didn't know God was behind the scenes working better things for me as well. I went back into my office. I cried. I didn't understand what was going on. It was so unfair. Everybody in my group at that time knew it was unfair, but nobody could do anything about it. So I managed to, pull myself together, and I went home and immediately started applying for jobs, because my time had started ticking again. Mind you, I had about a week and a half left or 2 weeks left to legally be in the country and with a job. So I basically had 2 weeks to find a job. I started applying like crazy, and luckily I was getting interviews. And then on one fateful day, I had gone for an interview in the morning at a place that was really, really far. I had like 5 rounds of interviews with like 5 different guys, and I hated the interview. Like, I really hated it. But, I was desperate for a job, so I just stuck through. And I remember after that interview, I was driving home and I got a call. And basically they were like, oh yeah, so you applied for the job. Are you going to be able to come for the interview today? And apparently they had sent an email that I had not received. So I said, okay, where are you? And I was literally like 15 minutes from the exit that would take me to this company. I, quickly told them, yeah, I'm on my way. And I got there. So when I got there, COVID had just started, I believe, 3 days prior to that. And so when I came in, COVID had not just started. So I went for this interview with 2 guys, very friendly guys, and it was just a really nice interview. Everything went well, and I left, and I believe the next day I got an offer for the job. 3 days later, COVID hit. So my very first day at this job, I had to go in with a mask on, and my company was actually really thriving during the pandemic, basically. Like, I was one of those essential workers that was going to work every single day. And I was just thinking, I was like, God, like, what are the odds that I end up in a company that, that was essential to this pandemic, and till today, I don't recall ever applying for the job. I don't recall ever submitting anything for that, but hey, who knows? I'm just glad for the blessing. So, that's been my journey. During the pandemic, I started, sharing a lot about my experience in engineering school, how I struggled, how I failed classes, how I didn't see a lot of women that looked like me, and, the whole MO. And I remember I started putting it out on Instagram, and, it started gaining some traction. And I was really passionate about it. So I was like, oh, wow, this is something that I should probably continue doing. And I think the first interview I had went really well, and I just kept going, and that's how we're here with Dear Women in STEM podcast today. I want to share this part of my story that, someone may think this is not applicable to STEM podcast, but this podcast is about my life. So every part of my life, I believe, is relevant to someone. You don't have to be a woman in STEM to listen to this podcast. You don't have to be a woman to listen to this podcast. I believe everybody can take something from the journey that I've been on. I got married on November 23rd, 2023. And I remember fondly that the morning of my wedding day, I was praying, I was writing my vows, and I was listening to a song that basically said, "See how far you brought me." And I got emotional and broke down because I wasn't even crying because, oh my God, it's my wedding day. It's a happy day and all that. I was crying because God has brought me so far. For me to be able to, overcome immigration issues, for me to be able to overcome school issues, for me to be able to overcome career stuff and just be where I am, and to be in a space where God has truly glorified me and God has truly lifted me up and honored me in such a way, I was overwhelmed. That's when I realized that this year was 10 years since everything happened. 10 years since I walked away from my friends in Florida and started all over again. 10 years since I had to face my fears head on and basically start all over again. And I was like, what are the odds that this is the 10th year? And in this 10th year, I have the opportunity to get married and start a new chapter in my life. So I want to encourage everyone, whether you're in a waiting season, whether you're currently failing classes, you're currently struggling at work, whether you're currently looking for a man, whether you're currently looking for a woman, whatever season you find yourself in, know that God is always behind the scenes working things for your good. I promise you that. If you don't take anything away from this episode, from this podcast, from this video, from this season, I hope you walk away knowing that regardless of what you may be going through or what you may be facing, there's always better on the other side. You just need to endure just a little bit. It's not always going to rain. It's not always going to be gloomy. The sun is always going to come out eventually. And things are going to turn around for your good. Things are going to get better. Don't sit and allow the enemy, or don't sit and allow yourself to just keep hiding, keep accepting your failures, and keep speaking down onto yourself. Always remind yourself that there is greater ahead for you. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone that has listened to the podcast this season. It's been amazing, and it's truly been an emotional journey for me. I never thought I would be the person that people would want to hear anything from. I never thought I would be someone that would be so bold enough to share my story to the world. I never thought I would be someone who could even do this. But you all have supported me in overcoming my fears, in being bold, in taking bold steps, and being courageous in my life. So I ask that you keep pushing through, don't give up, and the sky is the limit. You're good. Just keep going, just keep going, just keep going, and it's going to get better. It's only up from here. Look at me. I'm now a whole married woman. Like, I still can't believe it that I have somebody's last name, and yeah. But God has honored me, and God has truly been faithful in my life. And I know that regardless of whatever trials I may face tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month, next year, God is always working behind the scenes for my good. And He's doing the same for you as well. So hang in there. I love you so much. And thank you so much for supporting the podcast this season. Thank you so much for all the love. I know it's the holiday season. I know Christmas is almost here. So I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope you find time to spend time with family, loved ones, and friends, and take some time out for yourself. Take a mental note of how the year has been, some of the things that you want to do in the new year, and make sure you set your own personal goals for yourself in the new year. And I truly hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful season, and I will catch you all next year for season 2. Sincerely and with so much love, Lily and Judy.